The whole thing is a con job. It's very expensive.
Donald Trump issued a warning call, but, even though he was talking about Europe, I'm pretty sure it applies to us as well. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below. And it appears that Mark Carney has lost the EU. He's lost America, or just really actively rejected America. But rather than learn anything from these failures, they are doubling down, and it is so cringy to witness. And I'm really not saying this to be clickbaity, but it does appear that the Liberal Party of Canada is crumbling right before our very eyes, because it turns out lying is really bad for your reputation.
Hey, but on immigration, you better get your act together, or you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe. Stop. This immigration is killing Europe.
What is most important to governments? And this is very telling as to their character, their plans, and who they are actually in this business for. Is it you, the public? Is it the public safety of the public? Or is it actually just for political correctness, for virtue signaling, maybe even to import votes? Well, we've certainly seen a lot of examples that might lead you to think about the latter half a little bit more in recent years. And this coming from the CBSA, while they did boast about roughly 14,000 removals from the country, they have also had to admit, not out of their own free will, but after being pressed, by the way, that about 600 foreign nationals with criminal records who are due to be deported are just missing. We have no idea where those people are. Not to mention, we have no idea why those people were ever even granted permission to enter the country in the first place. Oh, right. It's because they aren't vetting them. And that also is one of the key things about the Century Initiative. In fact, Mark Wiseman, who is Mark Carney's advisor, who is also funded by the Globe and Mail, shocker, he actually said in an interview, we played this clip a few episodes ago, that vetting people is not the concern, that, people are going to slip through the cracks. Most people are good, doesn't matter. We just got to make sure that we get that population up as high as possible. You know what's kind of funny about the Century Initiative, though? It's this ideological fantasy in which a prime minister or a president, depending on the country, would be able to go out with a bang. And that bang is that they really increased the GDP per capita in their nation due to the influx of people. What they don't account for, though, is the reality, which is that when you don't build the infrastructure, you don't have the housing, the jobs to support an influx of people, your GDP per capita actually falls after that temporary spike of when those individuals were admitted into your country. And so the Century Initiative, of which Mark Carney has spoken on many times, he's spoken at their events, it promised all of this economic growth. It promised all of this really great stuff. And what we got instead was tent cities that are not filled with all of the asylum claimants. By the way, they're tent cities filled primarily with natural-born Canadians, of whom the Canadian government has no desire whatsoever to take care of. Rather, they would continue to send money overseas, foreign aid to different regimes who hate us, as well as to continue funding asylum claimants at a very, very expensive cost. And while we are going to get back to that, as well as all of the other breaking news, including some of Trump's comments, some of Mark Carney's comments, Doug Ford, all of these people who are making headlines right now, that story about those 600 people with criminal records where they have no clue where they are broke today, among a few other topics that we're going to get through. But what is the headline in the news today? Well, on the front page of almost anywhere you go, it's that Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry were seen just smitten with each other. Yeah, according to TMZ at least, pop star Katy Perry and former Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau were spotted dining together at Le Violon on July 28th, 2025, an upscale restaurant in Montreal, where they enjoyed a multi-course meal. Oh my gosh, they had lobster, tuna, lamb, gnocchi even, and sipped cocktails in a secluded dining area. Yeah, they were leaning leaning in closely. And a lot of people are now speculating that they're dating. Apparently, this means that they are dating. Trudeau picked up the bill, after all, so that must mean it's incredibly serious. Wow, what a pension that man must have. And also, I had no idea that Orlando Bloom and Katy Perry had separated. Tell me I don't work in top 40 radio anymore without telling me. And as we know, Trudeau and his ex-wife Sophie had split back in 2023. Now, it is unclear whether or not this was a romantic date or just a friendly hang. Could have been one of two options. Either A, it's probably a romantic date. B, maybe he's networking to try to boost his son's career as a rap artist. And honestly, one of the number one reasons why I'm leaning towards feeling like this was a plant is because on Justin Trudeau's own pages yesterday on his social media, he shared that he was in Switzerland hiking with his son. So did you just take a quick little 8-hour charter to go for date with Katy Perry? Well, the timing there doesn't really add up. Regardless of what the reason for their meeting was, we will find out in the future if it was a date, I'm sure. Nonetheless, the point of this and why I bring this up is because there is so much breaking news happening in Canada right now. And rather than have the hard conversations, the real conversations about all of that, they want you to be gossiping. You know, the pop culture drama, Justin Trudeau, Katy Perry, it's plastered everywhere right now. When we have real issues to be focusing on, especially this week.
Is it your expectation that any deal that we may be near would be somewhere in the ballpark what we just seen with the Europeans? 15% across the board. Is that acceptable?
Well, look, we have some similarities with the European Union in terms of our commercial relationships with the United States. We're one of their most important trade partners. Number two, depending on how you measure it, both imports and exports. We, like the European Union, are one of the largest investors in the United States. Our companies, our pension funds, others invest heavily in the United States. We are also partners in defense and security with the United States, as you saw with the agreements at NATO just last month. So there are similarities, there are differences. One is geographic proximity. Secondly is Europe. I'll give you one example of the difference. Europe, in that agreement yesterday, made commitments to buy American energy. Europe needs to fully get itself off Russian energy. So they're going to buy American energy to help them do that. America needs Canadian energy. You get a Canadian electricity. The only reason they run a trade deficit with Canada in goods and commodities is because they import around 4 million barrels a day in Canadian energy, as well as that electricity and other.
What the heck, Mr. Carney? What happened to Canada as the most European, non-European country? Yeah, we're super European. If you've ever been to Europe, you know that there is no bigger difference in terms of culture than that between Canada and Europe versus Canada and the U.S.
You mentioned Canada. I think you're trying to find a divide between us that doesn't exist. We're the closest of nations, and we had very good discussions today, but we didn't.
That's enough.
Canada.
Thank you. Please.
Ooh, to have Trump shut down Kier Starmer in the middle of him trying to sit there and wave a flag of unity with Canada, that is not a good look for Canada, is it? Makes you wonder what's really going on with these trade negotiations after all.
So we're in a different position. Similarities, there are differences. And that is why these negotiations, whether it's with our negotiations, which is all, where we're focused, but whether it's the other ones with Japan or European Union, they're different. They're different. They're tough negotiations, as they should be. As I say, we're standing up for Canada, Canadian interests. Of course, the United States is looking out. The president's looking out for the interests of American workers. And
while Donald Trump just locked in a major trade deal with the European Union, Canada's over here still scrambling over that 35% tariff spike as a result of no deal. Carney has officially said that the talks are in the intense phase. And of course, we know that that's not the full story at all. Left-leaning outlets are using words like slams, chaos, looming crisis, all of those very, very typical fear-mongering words, whereas right-leaning coverage has barely even mentioned the tariff deadline of this Friday, focusing instead on Harper warning against globalist deals. The center mostly just quotes Carney directly, where he's pretty much just saying we'll see where things land. And Ground News shows you where each outlet stands, clearly labeled and easy to compare. One of the things I use most with Ground News is their blind spot feature, because it's one thing to, maybe not hear the full side of a story, and it's a total other to recognize the stories that your side is omitting, the things that they don't want you to see. And Ground News flags all of those stories that are not getting enough coverage from your side, because being misled is not just about what they say, it's about what they don't. So if you want the truth without any curated spin, to just get the facts, to see where everybody is leaning and how the story compares and adds up, head to ground.news/Jasmine. You can also scan the QR code, which is on screen right now, and that'll give you 40% off their Vantage plan. That's ground.news/Jasmine for 40% off their Vantage plan. And I'll also include a link to that in the description of this video.
There is a landing zone that's possible, but we have to get there, and we'll see what happens.
Does that landing zone include supply management in any way? Are you open to more U.S. access to the Canadian market for dairy?
We've been clear about supply management. We've been clear about language rights as things that are fundamental to our structure. The access, there was access negotiated and as part of, as Minister Freeland knows, as part of the existing USMCA, as they would call it, CUSMA Accord. And the question is the effectiveness of those arrangements. So look, we're going to, as I say, we'll stand up for Canada's best interests.
And as the Elevate podcast puts it, Carney said, as the U.S. becomes unreliable, we will lean closer to our allies. But what happens when those allies get closer to the United States? Because with that deal signed yesterday by the EU, $750 billion of energy is what the EU agreed to buy from America. $600 billion of investment into America, specifically into defense spending. So even if we wanted to lean closer to the EU, even though that's a logistical nightmare in most respects, the facts are that, in essence, by aligning closer with reliable trading partners who don't seem very reliable, actually, it seems like they've just had a lot of nonsense conversations and meetings that have done absolutely nothing. That sounds pretty darn unreliable, actually. But by moving to them, we are, in essence, still going to be getting from the United States. We just have a middleman now, which would be the EU.
Just so everyone understands, I think it's fair to say, probably the most pro-American Prime Minister in Canadian history. And I tell people that if a year ago, the government had asked me, President Trump's coming in, he's talking about, big challenges on trade, USMCA, tariffs. What would you advise? I would have said a year ago, this is a real opportunity for Canada to really deepen its economic and security partnership with the United States. However, when this government did actually ask me a few weeks ago my advice was the opposite. My advice was, yes, on the economy, we've got to kind of get something short-term worked out with the Trump administration, but this really is a wake-up call for this country to truly diversify its trade export markets. That's why we did sign the trade deals all around the world, Europe, Asia, Pacific, the Americas. And Canada has been, to be blunt, this is nothing against the U.S. The reality is, independent of the current disputes, Canada has been, to use business term, and I'm in the investment business now, we have been grossly overweight the United States as a country. And There is no reason for that. Just because we have that geographic proximity does not justify the degree of dependence that we have on a single market, which is sometimes disadvantageous.
The irony with that is the fact that liberals over the last decade have been smearing and blaming Stephen Harper and the conservative government for pretty much everything they can think of at this point. But the truth there is Stephen Harper was actively trying to make Canada less dependent on the United States as far back as 2008. It was something he was very actively involved in. He didn't like how much our trade was designated for them because it didn't make sense. That's not how a country thrives. The United States thrives by having the resources and ability to do all of these things on their own and to sell it to the entire world. Canada sells it largely to the United States. Harper's government was who negotiated and signed trade deals with over 40 countries. And while he tried to open Asian markets to Canadian gas and oil and other resources, many of those projects were later blocked or delayed, but the intention was very clear that it was always the Conservatives and Stephen Harper who wanted Canada to not be so reliant on the USA. So I don't know, how does that make you feel, elbows up crowd? And then we got Justin Trudeau, who canceled Northern Gateway, who imposed all sorts of new regulatory burdens on pipelines, on the business sector as a whole, on investors, and reoriented trade talks to not just be about what matters, but to be focused around social issues that have nothing to do with the prosperity of your country's economy, and instead only aligning with people who were equal advocates for gender and the climate and Indigenous consultations. And we've seen Mark Carney do much of the same, actually. We have to be aligned with net zero so that we can trade and leapfrog our economy over other nations. Well, that's not true. Most other nations are actually starting to abandon that, because it doesn't work. We have to have an industrial carbon tax to be able to trade with Asia. That's not true, because Asia is in talks about it, but there's nothing set in stone at the moment. And it looks like at the earliest to even have them start talks again will be 2026. And that's just talks. And there's a lot of pushback. Oh, well, we have to have, carbon stuff for the EU. Do we? Because look at what just happened with them and the USA, which is very actively against all of that. Donald Trump refers to it as the Green New Scam for a reason. And there's a lot of data to back that up. But you know what's the most disappointing? When you have Donald Trump, the leader of the most powerful nation on the planet, saying things like this.
And the other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains. And I'm not talking about airplanes. I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States. And you look up and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, the props, because there's a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job. It's very expensive. And in all fairness, Germany tried it, and wind doesn't work. You need subsidy for wind, and energy should not need subsidy. With energy, you make money. You don't lose money.
And rather than to just listen to what he's saying, which is all truth, to see that data and to think, ooh, shoot, we got called out. Okay, let's reverse course now. Nope, you have David Eby saying this.
And the second is that we believe that climate change is real, that we understand that we have a role to play here in British Columbia in driving down emissions, and clean electricity is the way that we're going to do it. And we're going to address climate change at the same time as we're growing our economy. And I couldn't help but notice the President of the United States, Donald Trump, saying that he doesn't like those windmills that produce electricity. They interfere with the views from his golf courses. Let me tell you, to all American clean energy producers, come relocate to British Columbia. We are the clean energy capital of the world. We're going to do it. We're creating energy here. We're supportive of clean energy, and we will continue to be so. You can join the amazing more than 700 medical professionals that have applied to join our health service from the United States. And we welcome you, and you are welcome here.
In just a few hours, we have Pierre Poilievre's debate night in Battle River Crowfoot. And wowza, that is definitely going to be educational, I assume, given who else is debating with him, as well as informative. It's going to be entertaining. I'll tell you that much. We're going to be unpacking some of the key moments from it, as I will be watching live. I'm not going to be live streaming it or anything today. So we have that coming up in tomorrow's episode, as well as a series of lies. And I'm talking a lot of big lies when it comes to Mark Carney and the Liberal government and weird, shady things going on, which might honestly be the reason why all of a sudden Justin Trudeau is dating Katy Perry in Montreal from Switzerland. Just the timing, it's very unique. That's all I can say, because the media certainly wasn't focusing on everything else that was unfolding in the country, but they were really paying attention to Trudeau. So take that as you will. I'm Jasmine Lane. This is Over Opinionated. Subscribe, like, follow, comment your thoughts down below, and share this video. Ta-ta for now.